know, getting engaged, if you've been engaged for more than like 10 minutes, you've probably encountered a little stress, whether it's people asking you questions you aren't ready to answer or just budget overwhelm, family stuff. It gets stressful. So the good news is there is a plan for that. Let me tell you quickly about myself, if I can get all my boxes in the right place. I am Kara, and my business is called Kara Maureen Bridal Coaching. I am a life coach, girl mom, vintage lover, and basically I help brides navigate the stress and drama of getting married. Most importantly, so that you can get to your wedding day not having trashed your friendships or broken family relationships or doubted your fiance. Like so many people get to their wedding day having sort of really done a lot of damage to their relationships. And that's the thing that I want to prevent. And that is what I help my clients with. Let me admit one more. Okay. So that is a little about me. And then my background, just because sometimes it's fun. People are like, how did you get here? I went to an all-girls school, so I feel like that also helped me give me a lot of experience with like all the girl dynamics. And a lot of what I run into with my brides is the friendship dynamics tends to be one that people call me for. Then, as I was telling Christina, I went on to College of the Holy Cross, where I studied sociology and peace and conflict studies. And that is where this sort of idea about sort of addressing interpersonal conflict really became like a sort of a passion of mine. Then I went on to the University of Pennsylvania to study social work, because I'm like, there's all these theories, but like it never gets to the people. And social work, I felt like was a great way to really help people and get out of the theoretical. The problem was after I finished social work school, I was like, not finding my people. There were people serving homeless people or anorexics or addicts, and none of that was really my passion. Fast forward a couple of years, I discovered life coaching. I'm like, this is it. I want to help like really smart, savvy people who are getting in their own way, whether it's through anxiety or just interpersonal relationships, having goals that they can't accomplish. And that is like, you know, when you find your like place in the world, you're so pumped. So life coaching is my passion. And I started helping women around dating issues, which I still love. But then once I got married, as I'll talk about, I moved into the bridal space. My wedding was kind of crazy. I met my husband December 19th. We got married the following December 20th. So a year and a day. I was just saying I was engaged for about 3 months. So the whole thing was a whirlwind, which was great. You know, I was 33 years old. So I wasn't, you know, super young. We both knew that that was the right, that we had found our person. But as you can imagine, I'm an Irish, you know, I'm one of 6 kids, Irish Catholic family. My husband's one of 4, Persian family, like, you know, came to this country in the 80s. So we had kind of a culture clash. His parents had expectations for the wedding. Mine had expectations for the wedding. So we went through a lot. And I learned a lot about sort of how to do an intercultural thing, what happens with in-laws and sister-in-laws and my own sister, and so many great lessons. But needless to say, my wedding, the wedding planning, the engagement period was really, really hard. And again, I'm a person who had all this training in therapy and in life coaching, and I still found it to be a really challenging time in my life. So I was like, why is nobody talking about this? What is going on? I think so many women are like sitting there with their beautiful rings on, feeling like, why do I feel like crap? Why are my friends doing this? You know, why is my mom so obsessed? Why is my fiance acting like such a jerk about the budget? Like all these things come up and no one's really prepared for dealing with them. So that is why I started my business. So today we're going to talk about stress. I think we live in a culture that sort of normalizes stress and almost makes it feel like it's the badge of honor to be busy and stressed all the time. Obviously, we know now enough that it's really bad for your health. Stress is not something that we should wear as a badge of honor. Stress is meant to, you know, help us get out of a bad situation, but otherwise we should not be in a stress state. So, always good to look it up. A stress is that feeling of emotional or physical tension. So it's good to remind yourself that stress lives in your body, which is why then the doctors will show you that it causes harm to your body. That's why we don't want to be stressed, especially about things that we can control, which a lot of wedding stress we actually can control. There are 3 types of wedding stress. I'm sure you guys have all figured out by now. There's the budgets, there's the logistical stuff, which is like your budget, logistics, details, decisions. Are we going to rent buses? You know, am I going to spend 3 times as much on my dress because I fell in love with the one I tried on that was out of my price range? All of those things they can cause stress for sure. But they're logistical stress, and logistical stresses are a little bit of a different category, because and I'll show you on the next slide, there's a different way to handle them. The other kind of stress that people I think aren't always expecting, the logistical ones are the ones that you're going to hear a lot about. This is where a wedding planner could solve for you a lot of it. People who have been down this road before can solve a lot of it. So much of logistical stress is just, you haven't done this before. Nobody feeds like 100, no one throws a dinner party for 100 friends. Like your wedding is all of a sudden this huge production that most people haven't had experience with. That's that kind of stress. But then there's the identity stress. That's like that part of you that, like, once you've got your ring on, it's like, for some people, they waited their whole life for this moment, but it doesn't feel how they thought it would feel. And so that can be really stressful because you start to think, well, is something wrong with me? Is something wrong with him? Our relationship? Like, what's going on? The name change. A lot of people do not see it coming, that the idea of changing their name is suddenly like really sort of jarring and uncomfortable. And they're like, hold on a minute. Like, I've established my career. This is my name, my social media handles. Like, this is all of a sudden a little more stressful than they thought. And you can also be surprised by your fiance. He might have an opinion about you changing your name that you didn't expect. So that can cause a lot of stress. Another big one is just that whole body and the dress, that whole just like who you are and what you look like on your wedding day is such an iconic sort of thing in our culture. Obviously, that's a little stressful. And then just leaving your single life. Like, you know, for so many people who want to get married and they were dating, sort of actively looking for this next life stage, it's, you know, exciting to leave your single life, but then it's also kind of a bummer sometimes when you're like, oh my gosh, we used to do this, go to this bar, do this thing with the girlfriends, and all of that is changing. So that can be really stressful. And then there are your relationship stressors. When you get engaged, people are going to treat you differently. Maybe you've got your mom or his mom, somebody's like way getting obsessed about the wedding and like stressing you out. Your fiance might start acting weird. Maybe he's getting nervous about like, wow, my life is changing and it feels really weird. And how are we going to afford this? And what does this mean? And all of that. You could have the bridesmaid problem where all your friends start fighting and bickering and like just getting all these little new conflicts that you didn't see coming. And then you could have the sister-in-law problem where, you know, somebody doesn't want to, she wants to be in your wedding, or she doesn't want to be in your wedding, or you just can't quite understand where she's coming from or please her. So there can be all those kind of stresses. A lot of the people that work with me are having stresses number 2 and 3. But first thing we are going to do when we are experiencing any of these stresses is to get ourselves calm. You cannot solve any problem from that heightened state. When you're in the fight or flight, it's not a time to make a decision. You got to get yourself out of it. So whether that's exercise, walking, talking, whatever changes your state is the first key. Then you want to sort of, once you're in that calmer state, understand the source. Let's figure out what's really going on. So many times with wedding stress, because we're so used to thinking about it as logistical stress, we think that like, oh, it's our cake and we just can't figure out like how many flowers to put on the top. And like, so you think it's about like your sugar artist and you start to like put all your focus into that detail when really it's that you're maybe upset about what's going on with your mom, or you're unsure about your best friend's like attitude about your fiance is making you nervous. So it's really important to get really calm. And then let's really understand what is the source of the stress, because it will hide itself under logistical things when it's really more of an emotional or relational thing. For those logistical things, one little trick that we like to use is bag it, barter it, better it. When you're having overwhelm, like say you're fully freaked out and stressed out about tying ribbons on your program, you ask can I bag it? Do I really need it? barter it, have somebody else do it for you, do a favor for someone and have them do that favor for you, or better it, like invite people over, play music. Like these are just the ways, bag, barter, or better, or just like when you have to do something that is sort of stressful or overwhelming or taxing, there's always a way to either get rid of it or make it better. And those are great for logistical stressors. They will not help you though with emotional or relationship stressors. That is where we're going to have the next sort of focus for the presentation. For the other stuff, it comes down to one thing: your thoughts. So like we talked about in the beginning, where stress is actually sort of an emotional and physical feeling, that comes from your thoughts. And this is like a key thing. Again, this is not just, oh, we need to have positive thinking. This is not toxic positivity. I hate that stuff. What I want to talk about here is literally understanding the link of what happens inside, internally, what happens when we are experiencing stress. And we often think like, oh, this thing happened. My mother-in-law like scoffed at my idea about our appetizers, right? She thought it was really tacky. So immediately you're going to feel something. And then you think you're stressed because of what she said. But what you're not noticing is there was a thought in between there. There was your thought that led to your feelings. And so often we think, oh, it's just our response to these external circumstances. But it's not. Because circumstances don't cause our feelings. The circumstances don't cause our stress. It's our thoughts about them. And again, it's like, this is so obvious until you really slow down and see like, wow, I am not making that link. I'm not sort of stopping and separating out, what am I actually thinking? And so what we're going to do is go through a few examples so you can kind of see how it works. But this is the general sort of framework. This is like literally how life works. There's a circumstance that leads to a thought. Your thought leads to your feeling. And then this is the important thing. Your feeling is going to determine what action you take. And then your actions are going to dictate the results in your life. So when you're feeling offended, pissed, angry, you're going to have a very different action than if you're feeling calm, hopeful, happy. Do you know what I mean? So there's that really big thing that most people don't realize is we always act from our feelings. We think that we act from our thoughts. Like, oh, I thought this was a good idea, so I did it, but it's not. You had a thought that led to a feeling, and that feeling is what really motivates us and drives our actions. So let's see how this really sort of looks in the real world. So this is one of those examples that hopefully we will not be using too much going forward as everything is lifting, but I think a lot of us can look back, especially on our social media, and see how maybe different brides handled pandemic weddings. So the circumstance that's completely neutral is coronavirus causes a venue to close. So maybe, and then the thought for this bride is, this sucks, my wedding is ruined. So the feeling is stressed, annoyed, confused. So what do you do when you're stressed, annoyed, and confused? You complain, you obsess about it, you spin in your mind about like how this shouldn't have happened. What are you going to do? There's no other way. This was supposed to happen. Why are you getting screwed? This always happens. Like, you can see how it just is a cycle in your mind. And from that place, you're unable to plan. You don't, you're wasting more time because you're stuck in that feedback loop of like being so pissed and angry and taking that circumstance personally. See, in the thought line, you said, this sucks, my wedding's ruined. And then you're probably straining your relationships. People are probably tired of hearing you complain about it. They might start avoiding you. Your fiance might be like, there's nothing I can do to fix this. Everyone's feeling helpless and stressed. And it's because of how you decided to think about this circumstance. So when we'll go to the next slide, we'll have the same exact circumstance and a different thought. So for this, coronavirus causes my venue to close. You think, this is intense. Relationships now matter more than ever. A lot of people really took this pandemic and said, oh my gosh, look at this. The world can be completely shut down. And what do we have left? The people that we love, the people that we live with. Like, our closest relationships mattered more than ever. And for some brides I saw, they got really grateful. Thank God I'm engaged. Thank God I found the love of my life. And they felt really expanded by that. They felt creative. They felt inspired. Like, look at me. I'm living through this like worldwide global moment of like intense drama and craziness, I'm going to get creative. I'm going to get inspired. And then that's when you saw, and maybe you didn't, my feed is of course full of brides, but a lot of people did these beautiful micro weddings where it was just 2 or 3 people and they decorated it beautifully and they still wore their dress and they got these amazing photos. And it ended up being, the result was this really beautiful, dramatic, romantic wedding that they never thought they'd have. They never planned it. Nobody thought, oh, I'm just going to stand in my stairwell and get married. And get married in this really intimate way. I was planning a 200-person wedding, but because certain people had a different thought about that same scenario, things played out very differently. And again, there's not a right or a wrong, but it's just really about choosing. Like anybody can look at that same situation and choose a different thought. And it doesn't mean that this, that situation too, that she didn't have that other thought as well. Like your brain is going to serve up a ton of thoughts to every single circumstance. But the key that people don't realize is you get to choose. Which thought am I going to take and practice and own and claim? So you could see your venues closed and be like, shit, this sucks. I can't believe this is happening. I have the worst luck. Why me? And this is intense. This is interesting. I wonder why this is happening. Is there a way to make it work? So you might get like 9 sort of negative woe is me thoughts and like 2 or 3 kind of interested, curious thoughts. You get to choose which one to reach for and operate from. And that's the key difference. You see that, like, I'm sure bride number 2 went through all those emotions, but then she chose this thought. And then you can see the feelings came from that, the actions and the result. So hopefully that is making sense. This is another example. I get a lot, like I said, about sort of these bridesmaid issues. And it happens, a lot when you're trying to bring together a group of girls who maybe don't all know each other. And you're so excited. You want everybody to celebrate you, but they don't all know each other. There's stuff going on. Maybe one single girlfriend's feeling really jealous. Maybe one is feeling really nervous that you're going to like not be able to hang out with her anymore once you get married, or there's so many different things that go on with our bridesmaids that I think we're not always anticipating. But this is going to be another example of 2 different ways to interpret this neutral circumstance. So this is the circumstance. Your bestie's not responding to the group text. You have a group text going with your bridesmaids about your bachelorette party, and she is not responding. Your thought is like, what a brat. That's so selfish and rude. Like, you're my best friend. And now you're just like totally ghosting the group and going silent and not being like an active participant. And so you're feeling stressed, annoyed, and disappointed because you're like, this is awkward. It's making awkward for everyone else. You don't know why she's doing it. You're annoyed. You're disappointed because you're best friends. You would never do this to her. So what are you going to do? You're going to avoid it, complain about it, and probably gossip about it. You're going to just be so frustrated, and you're not going to want to like go into it because you've got so much on your plate. You're planning a wedding. And so for most people, they end up avoiding when they're feeling stressed, annoyed, or disappointed. The result, the relationship with your best friend is in shambles by your wedding day, which leaves her in a really bad position and you in a bad position. And it's just a bummer. Again, nothing has gone wrong, but this is just showing you, like, when you decide that quick thought of like, oh, what a brat, like that's so selfish. This is sort of usually how it starts to go down. And then there's a lot of cleaning up to do. And again, lots of people this happens to. This is not that anything is wrong. This is very, very common. A lot of times there's a lot of cleaning up to do after weddings with friendships, a lot of like, hey, let's look back and rehash, and I'm sorry, and I was so in my own head and I couldn't be there for you, and all these different things. But I'm saying, like, let's try to head it off before that happens. So this is, again, the same scenario. Your bestie's not responding to the group text with all the bridesmaids. Your thought that you're going to choose, something must be up with her. Again, it's not that you have to think, I only think rainbows and butterflies, nothing's ever wrong. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, like, can you reach for a better feeling thought than, oh, what a brat, that's so rude. Instead, you're like, that's weird, something's up with her. So when you think that thought, your feeling is like concern, curious. When you're concerned and curious about someone you love, what do? You reach out to her one-on-one. Hey, look, I noticed you've been a little quiet. Is everything good? What's going on? And then you have that heart to heart conversation that strengthens your relationship. That's the conversation where you find out, oh my gosh, you know, she's struggling with her dating life. Her father just got diagnosed with cancer. She's worried about losing her job. Whatever it is, maybe she's like, gosh, I don't want to bring bad news to my best friend who's engaged. Or maybe she's like, I feel like all these other girls know each other and I feel awkward because I'm your friend from childhood and they're your friends from college. And I just feel awkward and I don't know who's supposed to take the lead. There could be so many like things going on and you just don't know. So again, when you're feeling concerned and curious, you're open. And then you have, again, that chance to have that beautiful result, which is a heart to heart convo that strengthens the relationship. And of course, you can have that after the first scenario, but do you see how much drama and stress you've avoided by choosing that better feeling thought? So this is one that, again, I get so often is the mom factor. A lot of times people aren't expecting how sort of invested and interested and obsessed their mothers might be or their mother-in-law about the wedding. Especially for some of the older brides who are like, I'm paying for a lot of this myself. I've been to a lot of weddings. I know what to do. I feel like it's my day. I want to do it. They aren't prepared for the sort of influx of mom interest. So again, circumstance that's completely neutral is, we'll call it mom making numerous suggestions. What it really feels like is like, oh my God, she's hounding me. She's obsessed. She won't stop calling. It's all she talks about. But a neutral circumstance, we strip it down and it's like, she's just offering many thoughts with me about my wedding. The thought is, what a control freak. This is my day. Already you can see that we're getting into like that power play, which is going to make you feel stressed, annoyed, overwhelmed. What do we do with our mom when we're feeling stressed and annoyed and overwhelmed by her? What we probably did as a kid. The funny thing about weddings is they always, in the family dynamic, they bring us back to a lot of those childhood patterns that we haven't been in a long time. But the family weddings are such a family affair and the families are so involved or not. And it just brings up a lot of those sort of childhood dynamics. And you might find yourself acting like a total teenager unintentionally, but it's because you're feeling stressed, annoyed, overwhelmed. So you're going to lash out, which is going to leave you both feeling hurt and distant. Like you want to feel, closest with your parents or your mom, any, whoever your sort of loved one is in this position. And if you're not choosing your thoughts carefully, it's going to lead again down sort of this little bit of a negative spiral. So let's try it again with a different thought. Same circumstance, mom making numerous suggestions. This time our thought is, God, she really cares about this. She really wants to be involved. Like you start thinking this must mean something to her. What is, this is taking me by surprise that she's so into my wedding. And let me just find out more. So again, when we're interested and open, like, wow, mom, I really didn't think you were going to be so obsessed with my wedding. Let's talk about it. Once you open that, again, so many of us want to throw up the walls when we're in the wedding planning because we're like, you're getting so much information from perfect strangers, from friends, from coworkers, like people just deluge you with like their advice so we start to like put up these walls. And again, for a lot of people, it's good to put up the wall, but with our people we care about the most, with our inner circle, I want us to remember the walls need to come down around this time. But in order to do that, you've got to preserve your energy, your spacious, the space inside your mind. So with mom, this is when you want to find a time where you can get calm and be in a rested space to give her the attention and the energy to figure out, okay, what's going on with her. And then you'll have that conversation and hopefully lead to that deeper relationship. And then going forward, more fun and ease with the planning. So many people spend months like keeping mom at bay, like, oh, look, I went and picked out my napkins, but I didn't tell my mom I was doing it. And so like, it's like this whole game of like cat and mouse with the mom, when really you could spend the energy just being like, let's have one sit down where I really understand, okay, mom, explain to me, like, what do you really care about the wedding? What are you worried about? What are you excited about? And then once you have that info, you can much more strategically bring her into the fold on some decisions, do your own thing on other decisions. But when you don't let somebody like release what's on their mind, someone like your mom who's had your wedding day in the back of her mind since the day you were born, like if you don't give her that grace and that space to be a part of it or to share, it's one of those moments you don't get back. And it's a beautiful time in your life to deepen these relationships. And I just think so much healing can come in the wedding planning journey with our family, with our friends. But often the opposite happens. And so my approach is always that, like, when like the water is getting boily and things are bubbling up, it's just an invitation for us to like get really present with these people and give them our time and our attention. It just so happens to be that we often feel like we don't have any time and attention because we have this wedding on our mind and we're worried about our biceps and can we fit in this and can we afford that and what's it going to look like on Instagram and what did our friend do last week and late night snack and all these like things, these little details that like the wedding industrial complex, as I like to think of it, like shoves at us, and we're just it's just constant overwhelm. And so then we often just don't take a minute for the people that are most important, that inner circle, those best friends, your fiance, your mom, like really giving your time and attention and focus to them and letting them be there for you, letting them show up for you, having that vulnerability, having that heart to heart. Last month in bridal sessions, it was all about just understanding change. And while you're going through this huge change as the bride, the people around you are also going through that change because they're losing you as just their sister who they could call at any moment. Now you've got a husband. The mom and dad are losing you as like, maybe you're not the first call that you make if you're, you get a flat tire. Now you're going to be calling your husband. Or when you're making, vacation plans, you're going to be doing that with your husband. And, your sister could be like the third person, fifth person to know when she used to know everything first. And so all of those things cause a lot of, upheaval in our relationships, and we need to give them the time and the space to like let that get air, let that get out, and then it's so much more fun and it's so much more that like joyful celebration, and it's not this like tense day that like has gotten everyone super pissed. That's what happens with so many weddings, is by the time you get there you're so just like exhausted from going through so much. People, friendships fall apart, and parents are, feeling used and abused and like treated like an ATM machine. And brides are feeling really like alone and isolated, and like nobody gets how hard this was. And that is when you really want to remember, it's your thoughts are not objective. Your stress and your overwhelm and all of that is just coming from your thoughts. And the problem with the thoughts, like we just saw, hopefully in those examples, is that they're going to sneak up on you. They come so fast. Like I remember when I first learned this, I was like, no, I'm a feeling person. So when something happens in the world, I feel it first. I don't, even before there's a thought, I have a feeling. And it really took me a minute to like slow way down and understand, like, actually I do have a thought. It just comes quick, and that feeling comes even quicker. So this is like a practice and just bringing awareness. For me, it's just knowing, God, I feel like crap. And then back up. What am I thinking? And then can I reach for a better feeling thought? And again, here's another way to, instead of kind of going through all of that circumstance, thought, feeling, action, result, instead of thinking of that whole sort of flow, one thing I always do is just like, when I'm thinking a thought, like if I say, one of my brides I was talking to the other day was like, I went to my fiance's family's house, and my future sister-in-laws said that like, all I ever do is talk about my wedding. And they think I'm such a dork and like, they hate me. And now and then of course she's feeling like, this sucks. I can't believe that like, I'm going to have a bad relationship with my sister-in-laws. Like they think I'm so annoying. And it's like, is it true? Like, just ask yourself, like, can you absolutely know it's true that that's what they think? Or was that one comment and then you are taking it out of context. Is that comment because maybe they're feeling really nervous and insecure about losing their brother to you? Or maybe they're saying it because they feel like you're talking to everybody else about your wedding, but you're not talking to them about your wedding. Like there's so many ways to think about that one comment. What you're making it mean determines everything. So again, if you're feeling crappy about your relationship with someone, back up and say, what am I thinking about it? And then reach for a better feeling thought. And for me, again, we're not saying like, just think positive. No, this is like really practical and pragmatic. And it's like, for me, it's not reach for like, oh no, my sister-in-laws love me and they just are obsessed with me. Like that doesn't feel true in your body. You're not going to believe it. This is not like, you want to sell yourself on something that doesn't feel true. We want it to feel true. The thing is, you got to be careful because your brain's going to serve up a lot of thoughts, and your job is to sort of figure out what feels the truest. Usually things that make you feel shitty are not true. It's the things that make you feel lighter that are closer to the truth. And so you want to reach for that better feeling thought. You want to reach for something that leaves you with some room to move, with some hope and some openness and optimism. I think that is always the goal. It's just, God, instead of I'm going to have a crappy relationship with my sister-in-laws, they think I'm such a dork, they hate me. Let's reach for like, wow, like I feel like we have a long way to go. We have a whole lifetime. It's okay if they don't quite get me now. Oh, okay, they think I'm a little cheesy about the wedding. That's okay because that's just one day. And then we have the rest of our lives to lead in ordinary time and they'll get to know the rest of me. Like, do you see how it's just toning it down a little that'll bring your stress down? Then you're not spending, from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. going over and over and over in your mind. That's what stress is. It's that like you have that crappy feeling inside you. So then your brain's going to try to think of like, why are we feeling stressed? Why are we feeling like a danger? Why are we feeling a threat? And then it's just that cycle. And then you try to find a thought that validates the feeling of feeling crappy. And then you think more crap. And then you're on a spiral to nowhere. So what you're going to do is keep reaching for the thought that's a little lighter. And that gives you feeling a little better. Like, again, pandemic wedding, it's like, is there a way that this could be okay? Is this just an opportunity to have a very inexpensive wedding when I was going to spend all this other money? Now look, I can buy a house 2 years earlier. There's so many different ways to look at it. And it's that mental flexibility that really keeps stress at bay. So that's what I want you guys to take away is choose your thoughts on purpose. That is the absolute antidote to stress. You are in control of how you feel. That is the biggest blessing and curse of the whole thing is that we don't just get to blame everybody. Like, well, I feel like crap because I have this, this, and this. You're in control. But once you take back that control and you take back that responsibility, you get to own how you feel. You get to choose how you feel. And then you can create a wonderful bridal experience and not get like hit by the truck that is like wedding overwhelm. Because I'm telling you, this is the time in your life where you've got a lot of eyes on you, maybe in a different way than you ever did before. You've got a lot of pressure. You've got a lot of expectations coming out of nowhere. You've got a lot of changing family dynamics and friendship issues and things with your fiance. Like that's shifting. And your own, like we said, your own identity is really absolutely changing. And the only way to sort of be able to meet this moment for what it is to keep that stress under control and do that by reaching for better feeling thoughts. If you ever need me, I am here for bridal coaching. I offer sort of work together for 3 months. If you're really dealing with some really intense issues, or I have the Bridal 911, which is just like a 90-minute call that we can solve any problem. And then I've also gotten into officiating and ceremony design, which is just a fun little add-on. But thank you guys so much for listening. And I want to open it up to